Well, it happened. I went to the comic store to pick up my books like I do every week. And I walked in and he goes to my bin and he goes, I got nothing. I was getting 50 comics a month. So I go in every week. He pulls out a stack. Now that's just 50 new comics. I was also getting big books and big reprints and stuff. So it's even a lot more than that. And like I said, beginning of December, I said, I'm cutting back. Can't do this anymore. It's too much. And I said, just let it trickle out through the end of December. Whatever you've ordered, there we go. And as the new year begins, no more of this stuff. There's only a couple, 2 or 3, whatever comics that I left. I'll get those. They're like mini series or something like that. So we'll get those. But here it is. It's 2026. It came before I know it. And I've already run out. And that was it. There was nothing for me. First time I've been at the comic store in years. And not only didn't walk away with a gigantic stack that kind of lopsides my car to one side trying to drive home, but he goes, I got nothing. I felt a little embarrassed, but I shouldn't. I mean, he makes all his money on Pokemon cards, and this is what I wanted, and I wasn't really sad. In fact, as I look through all the preview magazines that I keep getting every week, like I've shown, even though the stuff looks awesome, I don't feel the need to say, order this for me. So I'm sticking to my guns, and I like it. It's a new year for me. But I think it's time to go back in time and look at my heyday in the world of comics from when I was a lot younger. And we can look at the first issue of Wizard magazine. And here it is. It came out in July of 1991. It ran for 20 years, and at its peak, it was selling 100,000 copies per month, which is a lot more than any issue of a comic book sells for nowadays. I have the first 100 issues. It ends at issue 235. It had a spin-off magazine called Inquest Gamer for customizable card game. Boy, I could not get that word out. Customizable card games. Collectible card games? I think that's what they're called. Anyways, there were Marvel cards. There were Star Wars cards. I had some at the time. I didn't play any of the games. I got out of it pretty quick. I think I got the first few issues of the magazine, but I didn't stick with it. It was nothing for me. It doesn't matter. That started in 1995, but in 1997, the spin-off magazine Toy Fair came out, and I got that for years and years. I have a lot of those too. And that magazine was canceled in 2011, the same time that Wizard was canceled. But when it started in 1997, that was the same year that Wizard acquired Chicago Comic-Con and eventually expanded into having 25 different Wizard World conventions around the country. And in fact, in 2011, when these went out of business, or the print magazines were all canceled and stuff, I actually started going to conventions on a regular basis, and a lot of them were Wizard World conventions, including the one in Chicago. Now, this is published by a guy named Gareb Shamus, and we will flip this open and take a look. Okay, so here is Gareb Shamus. Now, his parents owned a store called the Wizards of Cards and Comics in the 1980s, and he worked there with them. And then he eventually started putting out a newsletter in the shop itself called Wizard Magazine, or no, it was actually called Wizard Guide to Comics, and it was popular enough, he decided, you know what, I could probably put this out as a magazine, and here it was, and it took off like crazy. Insane. And as you can see here on the cover is Spider-Man with the Wizard robes by Todd McFarlane. Now, this coincided with the release of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man comic, not the Amazing Spider-Man, but it was his own Spider-Man comic that he was writing, penciling, and inking. This coincided with issue 14, which just actually happened to be the final issue he worked on. He came back for issue 16. I don't know if he already had that in the can and they just put that out, but issue 15 and then 17 on, it was taken over by Eric Larson, just like Eric Larson had taken over the Amazing Spider-Man from Todd so that Todd could do the Spider-Man comic. But now he left and put out this Spider-Man cover with Wizard and was gone. He actually quit Marvel and retired from comics at that point. Also, the same month this magazine came out, Rob Liefeld announced his intention to publish a comic called Youngblood through Malibu. Then later on in September of 1991, he made an advertisement that he was going to be putting out a comic through a company called Image, a company that didn't exist yet. But in December, he recruited Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, and Jim Valentino to start this company called Image. Then Todd recruited Jim Lee, and Jim Lee recruited Will Spertatio. And the first Image comic would come out in April of 1992, the month of my 18th birthday, and their first release was Youngblood, issue 1, the one he originally said was going to come from Malibu. Malibu was actually distributing Image Comics or publishing Image Comics or whatever when they started, so it all kind of went together. The second Image comic to come out would be the following month. In May, it would be Todd McFarlane's Spawn, issue 1. So let's open this back up again and take a look. So here we have a question and answers page. I really enjoyed the Predator vs. Alien miniseries from Dark Horse Comics. Is there any chance of a Predator vs. Aliens movie? And the answer is, it doesn't look like it. The idea was proposed, but the two main monsters are two separate licensed characters, and the legal red tape that would have to be cut through makes the project impossible. Well, not really impossible, because it happened. How about this? Is Cletus Cassidy from The Amazing Spider-Man issues 344 and 345 going to be the new Venom? The answer is, it sure looks that way. A small piece of the Venom alien costume tore away from the main suit and landed on Cletus. It appears like there will be two Venoms running around the Marvel Universe. Nope, he didn't become Venom. He became Carnage. I love looking back with 2020 hindsight. How about this? This guy, he signs his name Bendover. Let's keep flipping. Oh yeah, the interview with the man himself, Todd McFarlane. This is the stuff my life revolved around. The Wizard magazine interviews and articles with the artists that I wanted to be. These are the men I worshipped, and he was the head of the pantheon, Zeus himself. And look at this gigantic, beautiful piece of artwork of the Incredible Hulk, and look at him coloring it in with these markers. Look at the beautiful color. Look how big that is. God, I love that. And Felix the Cat. And when I met Mr. McFarlane, I got him to sign this comic for me, which was his first issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, the comic I grabbed off the spinner rack at 7-Eleven. It's a great article. And in there, they're asking him about his future. And he says, I'm just going to stay on Spider-Man, but maybe I'll stop doing Spider-Man. And if I do, which is probably going to happen, I'm not going to come back and do a monthly book. In fact, if I do anything, it'll be for myself, self-publishing. Now, this is long before the thought of Image Comics came about in the mind of Rob Liefeld. And you know what? He never did come back and do a monthly title. He wrote a bunch of issues of Spawn, but he never drew a monthly title again. Now we get a short history. Spider-Man, and we got different, look at this. So the Wizard's Comic Watch. So here is the Wizard himself. Look at that. Since Lobo was making his big splash there in the early 90s, they're saying, hey, look, this is where he first came from. Omega Man issue 3 from 1983. Go look it up. This is the very, very dawn of Lobo actually coming back in those miniseries and being this huge phenomenon. I love it. X Factor 24. This is when Archangel was like a big deal. I had this issue too, and I was like, oh, Archangel is awesome. There were so many characters that came out at the time that we were like, they're so cool. Like Archangel, Gambit, Cable. Characters that like nobody cares about anymore, but boy, they were just so awesome at the time. This is an article about how they're bringing in digital coloring on a computer. This is 1991. This is early. What is this, like 6-7 years before the invention of Photoshop? Here we go. Wizards Top 10. X-Force issue 1. That's number 1 on the list. Number 10 on the list, New Mutants issue 100, which is the final issue of New Mutants, and then it was relaunched with X-Force 1. Both of them, same team, created by Rob Liefeld, and as you can see, it's all centered around Cable. There's the Cable trading card, Cable this and that. No one cares about Cable anymore. They care about one of the random villains that Cable was battling. Deadpool. At the time, no one cared about Deadpool. It was all about Cable. Now here we go. X-Men issue 248. Jim Lee's first X-Men comic, and they're saying this is something you should look out for and buy and snatch up because Jim Lee is going to come out with X-Men issue 1. Keep that in mind. It's not out yet, but there's Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man issue 1. And look, New Mutants 87, first appearance of Cable. No one cares about first appearance of Deadpool. Okay, I'm sounding like a broken record here, but back when Silver Surfer comics were a big deal, I had every issue. Okay, grading comics. Now, this is how I grew up. It was always fair, fine, near mint, mint, this and that. None of that exists anymore. It's all 9.6, 9.8, gem mint, Mark Jewelers. You know, it's the CGC grading. You guys all know that. Let's keep going. Look at the pictures of the guys that they show. These are the people that would then form Image. Will Spertatio, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld. They're all babies. And, of course, the one and only Art Adams from Longshot. I met him, and I'm going to meet him in 2 months. I cannot wait. All right, so we got the price guide. This was always kind of fun to look through, you know, and see like, oh, I got that one. It's $22. I am so rich. You know, it's funny. Oh, I actually have that comic right there. Captain Marvel. There it is, Lobo. So you can see here, he only had his first miniseries out. It was like the next miniseries after that that really pushed him into the stratosphere. We got some ads. See, this is the shirts, the Todd McFarlane art on shirts that Todd always talks about. It's like the nail in the coffin to get him to just be done with it. How the company is making so much money off of merchandise featuring his art that he's not getting paid for. They're just pulling it out of the comics. And he's saying, I don't even care if you pay me for it or whatever. Just at least give me like a complimentary shirt or button. If you make merchandise with my art, can I have a copy myself? Nah. And he got off lucky because back in Jack Kirby's day, they stole all his original artwork and kept it. Check it out. Todd McFarlane poster. I'm so glad it's still in here and not ripped out. Look at that. I might have to scan that into the computer. So here we are, all 5 covers for X-Men #1 by Jim Lee that is to come, combined here in black and white, not colored yet. And look, this is what eventually would spin off into Toy Fair magazine. You get your toy price guide, looking at the old Secret Wars and Superpowers collection. Love it. Okay, now an article about horror comics, which has never been my thing. So I probably never read this article, and I'm not going to now. Now this is interesting. Upcoming comic, Spider-Man issue 15, artist-writer Todd McFarlane, an all-humor issue where Todd and the Impossible Man from Fantastic Four poke fun at the new X-Men book, Jim Lee's new X-Men book to come. Well, why is this interesting? Because it never happened. Like I said, Todd retired with issue 14, which came out same time as this, and issue 15 is drawn by Eric Larson, and the Impossible Man is not in it at all. I wonder if he had gotten started on it, or I wonder if he just said, this is what I'm going to do, and then never did it. I wonder if there's actually never, ever seen story and art by Todd and the Impossible Man. I want them. Rocketeer coming on the screen. I saw the movie, you know, after the fact on rental and just never really understood the appeal. So this is an article about, you know, the business aspect, speculating, buying a bunch of comics you think are going to be hot so you can flip them later. And they're kind of talking about how this X-Force #1 broke all the sales records, beating the record held just previous by Spider-Man #1. So Todd makes the record, Spider-Man #1. Rob beats him with X-Force #1, and they're speculating that Jim Lee is going to beat them when X-Men #1 comes out. Well, that's what happened. X-Men #1 was and still is the highest selling comic in the history of the universe. Now, here's some of those trading cards I was talking about, like the Marvel ones. Look at how absolutely horrible that art is. That's by a 5-year-old. And here we go, the show and convention calendar. So if I wanted to go to a comic convention in 1991, I was out of luck. There were 0 in the entire state of Florida. Now, I remember I did go to one comic book convention, I think the late 80s or something. It was held in the lobby of a Best Western. It was a hotel, and I convinced my dad to take me there. I had heard about them from my friend Mark, and I went there, and it was just one random old guy with like 4 short boxes of comics thrown on a card table. And I said, this is what people talk about when they're talking about conventions? I thought this place was supposed to be full of people dressed up as Klingons. This sucks. I didn't even look through the comics. I got out of there. Never went to a convention again until 2011. Well, actually, I went to Star Wars Celebration in 2010, but that's a very sad story. I've told about it before. Not going to repeat it. And so we come to the end, and I hope you had a good time, because I'll see you again next time.